We are at the bottom of page 7. So we were getting into, we had all of the questions asked regarding the eating of matzah for 6 days and the obligation to eat matzah, which actually took place the first night of Passover, and then the Jewish people left Egypt the next day, and they had to rush out and eat matzah. So why are we eating the matzah? We're eating matzah because we had all the questions. We're not going to go into the questions now because now we're going into a Chassidic explanation. We'll get back to the questions later in the discourse when we come to the answers. So here, to understand all of this, the Alter Rebbe is now launching into a spiritual explanation of why we eat, why we need to eat to sustain ourselves. And basically, I'm going to give you the basic idea here, and that is that according to Kabbalah, the food that we eat is actually sourced in a higher spiritual level than where the human is from. So the human being is on one level, a lower level, we'll get to soon. The food is actually sourced on a higher level than that. And so, spiritually speaking, we need to eat in order to sustain ourselves, because we're actually drawing energy from a higher spiritual source through eating. And that's what we're going to be discussing here. And the levels that we're talking about are the levels of tohu and tikkun. So just to understand where this comes about in the orders of the worlds. So according to Kabbalistic understanding explained by the Arizal, yes, Susan, you have a question?
Okay, you just said that the food is sourced from a higher level than mankind?
Yes.
I'm dropping my mouth because I'm in shock.
Right, that's shocking. That's good. That we should be able to get more participants now that I'm saying shocking things. But seriously, this is what Kabbalah describes. The Kabbalah describes that we are sourced at a lower level, and there are a lot of physical things that we partake of that are actually sourced in higher levels. And we're gonna discuss it here today.
Can we consider this a higher energy when you meant a level or not?
Here's the tricky part. Its source is from a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
Practically, the way that it becomes manifest in this world, it's at a lower level. All right?
Yes, I understand that.
Now you're really confusing me, Rabbi.
No, why, Susan?
It's from Hashem.
It's just a physical application of the additional part to our body that allows us to become in a little bit higher condition, in a higher level. It could be a spiritual food, so-called, or it could be a materialistic food, like, what you eat. It should not be really a big difference. What it means that from a status quo, it gives us a different kind of jump or different. That's why I wanted to say the word energy, because it kind of makes you feel much more clear of what you explain as a higher level.
Okay, now I'm getting to understand what this is about. I think.
Yeah, because you see, if you would imagine just a completely standing still condition, let's just pretend that we are in, it's just a table or a chair or something that is not moving, just as a hypothetical kind of example. And then everything additional will bring you to a little bit different level. Let's see, you put a cover on the chair. It immediately makes it a little bit different than just a plain object. Do you understand what I mean, Susan, or not?
Yes, I'm understanding it better the way you described it. Yes. Now,
Okay.
now I get the point. But
Right.
before, when Rabbi said source on a higher level, what? Now,
But,
now I see what you're talking
when
about.
I think about a matter of level, can you please find a different synonyms that would kind of make it a little bit clear to understand? You see the word energy, because we know that by eating food, it really will give you a completely different source of, maybe understanding, maybe doing things a little bit better or moving to a little bit higher level. But if you don't use the word energy, how would you how would you explain the word level? That's what I'm trying to see for you to clarify. Do I ask the clear question or not really?
I'm not entirely understanding it.
Okay.
I'm
You're
not
saying,
entirely understanding it. What this goes back to, what Kabbalah describes. Let me share with you a little bit before we go in studying it inside. Let's discuss a little bit of how Kabbalah talks about this, okay? So we have our physical realm down here, okay?
okay.
And our physical realm down here is connected ultimately to our source realm, which would be called the world of Atzilut.
Okay.
So we're in the bottom circle, but source is from this higher level. Okay. Let me, you know what, I might even talk about this in terms of another talking about a different topic that might help us understand this a little bit better.
Sure.
So you have people who have creativity, and you have people who understand how to create order in the system. Now, in order to bring anything about, let's say to bring about anything of value and worth in this world, which one do you need? Do you need creativity or do you need order?
Both.
Both.
You need both, okay?
Yeah.
Now, which one would you say is on a higher level?
Creativity.
All right, that is a good answer, and Kabbalah agrees with you. So order is on a lower level, but it's
Yes.
a level that allows us to synthesize, okay? And in order to synthesize, everything has to be able to kind of fit together in some way, make room for everything else. Sin, not S-I-N, but S-Y-N means together, right? Like it has to do with something coming together. Like a synagogue is a place where we gather together. So to synthesize, to bring things together, it's actually coming spiritually from a lower level. Have anybody here had to deal like with very artistic people? Sometimes, I don't want to generalize, but sometimes artistic people can be very difficult to deal with.
They're way out there because I used to be an art major in college, way out. And it's difficult to kind of reel them back into the order of life.
Yes, because and it's not because they're just difficult people, but they're not working on the orderliness in order to have order. So you have a street system, right? You drive through the streets. Would you want a street system designed by an artist? Not really. You wouldn't want a street system because you might have people all going together to the same spot at the same time to create a combustion that would be such an experience, so amazing, it would be, right, a crash. But that's not a good thing for a street system, right?
Yeah.
So the point is, obviously, the ultimate goal is merging these levels. But here, what we're talking about is there's a certain source of everything that we're going to be talking about. The Kabbalistic term is the world of tohu, which is the world of chaos, which is a world where there was no synthesis. And because there was no synthesis, there was a coming apart. Things could not come together, so they came apart. And this is the level of tohu, but it's very much connected to the creative power, which is considered a higher level. But it's not going to be in and of itself effective for bringing about reality as we know it. You see, and so there's physical matter in this world which is rooted. It doesn't mean that it is, but its source level is from this higher spiritual realm called tohu, called chaos, the world of chaos.
But the process between, let's say, the first level where we are and the next level is we are helped by the synthesizing with the food that brings us to the next level. Let's not discuss the highest level, which is, I understand that it's a chaotic, it's really...
The level of chaos is not the highest level, it's the higher level.
It's the higher level. Yeah, but I think it helps to understand the word synthesize really helps to understand what is the process. That's the process by what our food helps us to bring our spirit to a next possible level.
Spiritually speaking, the human being is the great synthesizer.
Right. Okay.
The Kabbalistic word for this is tikkun. Tikkun has to do with synthesis. It means correction. But it's correcting the chaos that occurred in higher spiritual realms where there was no synthesis. So when we say we're on a lower level, we're on the source of the human being is a very high level in the world of Atzilut. It's a very high spiritual level. But there are even higher levels that were the levels of chaos that preceded the world of Tikkun. Let me take this out.
What's the level of woe?
I don't know. Tohu and Bohu usually go together.
Right, that's why I'm asking.
The Kabbalah talks about Tohu, right, which is of course a reference to the word in the Bible that when God brought about existence, everything was Vavohu. So this spiritual realm that Arizal refers to as Tohu, I'm not familiar with a level called Vohu. I don't know. It's a good question. But what all of this is about,
Rabbi, one question. Okay, if plants are created at a higher level, then when we talk to trees and when we talk to plants to encourage them to grow, and they grow, are we helping really? I mean, are we encouraging the growth, or is that's being silly and insane? I mean,
well, let's put it this way. How about when we water the plants and trees?
Right.
Does that help them grow? For sure.
Of course.
The trees, right? We grow them, right? And the other question is, do they have a consciousness? That's an entirely different question, right? And I don't know. I mean,
does Kabbalah say that that something that's at a higher level, sourced at a higher level, is it possible that there is communication at that higher level between?
There is something there, okay? So Kabbalistically, there is a spirit that even inanimate objects have, and people who are on a very high spiritual level, beyond maybe what we've ever seen. It says that King Solomon was able to speak to animals. You didn't know that his middle name was Doolittle. So King Solomon was able to speak with the animals. This was one of the wisdoms that he had. But Kabbalah describes that wisdom is being able to go to the spirit level and communicate on the spirit level. But by that same token, could that be possible with trees, with plants, and ultimately with even inanimate objects? I would say yes. But if you or me try it, they would call us crazy. And here's the thing, Susan. There's no problem with talking to plants. I've got no problem with anyone talking to plants. But when they tell me that the plant is talking back, that's when I have a problem.
The water, like you said, the water for the tree, that's the food for the tree, fertilizer and water.
Right.
So the talking doesn't do anything. You still have to water and fertilize them.
Sure. Sure.
By the way, it is not a tree. It's I think it's a flower, and it's a really beautiful place, island on Virgin Island called St. John, and it's a plant that reacts to a sound. When you clap your hands, it closes the petals, and then it opens when you are silent. That's so you never know. You really never know.
Right. Yeah. You know, and I haven't really done any research on that subject, but I would say spiritually speaking, there is a spirit there. There's
Sure.
nothing about that. Now the question is, do me and you have that capacity? I would say definitely we don't.
Right.
It says that when Mashiach comes, the stone will speak and talk about what it witnessed. And it's a pasuk. I forget the exact verse, but it's basically that the brick will call out and speak. Anyway, and I'm sure you've heard the expression that the walls have ears.
Yep.
This is also brought in the Talmud.
Only in certain countries.
Only in certain countries, right? Okay. So moving right along.
Good point, Ben.
And I want to explain a larger idea here, and we may or may not. Hopefully, we'll get back to the discourse. We have to understand something. We think about God, and when we think about God, we're thinking about the way that God has become manifest within a system of us to know Him. We think about the name of God, right? We have in prayer, we're praying to God. And God is when you describe God, God is the creator, God is the giver of life. God is glorious, God is exalted. But all of these things are all the ways that God came into, so to speak, a format, okay? How did God go from being beyond any dimension whatsoever into a dimension? How did God go, right? The greatest chasm, the greatest split, the greatest connection, the greatest distance that God had to go, so to speak, was to go from no dimension into becoming a dimension. When we speak about God in the world of Atzilut, and we speak about different attributes of God, and we speak about different names of God, this is the way that God has become manifest in the world of Tikkun, in the world of order and dimension. Okay? But how do you go from no dimension into the world of dimension? Right? This is the real big leap. This is the real big jump. And this is what Chassidus and Kabbalah describe as the world of Tohu. There was this world of chaos, right? So sometimes we think of that and we think, wow, well, why was there a world of chaos that was necessary? But really, that world of chaos was necessary because how else are you going to go from no dimension into dimension? How do you make that leap? To go from immense light to very little light, we can understand, right? you diminish the light. Anybody has a dimmer on their light switch? It's very easy. You can go from a tremendous amount of energy, modulate that energy, and bring it to a lower level of energy. That's understandable. But how do you go from no dimension whatsoever into dimension? And so this is just, not that we can really understand this, but this is what the Arizal explains in the coming about of the universe. Let me just share this picture with you again, because it's just gonna help us in it's going to help us in understanding the overarching idea here when we talk about these different levels. So this is bringing about of existence. This is God. So the white sheet of paper here is the very essence of God. And God created a void, a place in which his light did not illuminate. And so God's light shined forth in this line here called the Kav. That red light is the light of the infinite light of God coming into existence. But at this spot here, you see this explosion mark, this red explosion. That's called Tohu. At that point, that was where there was chaos, where there was so much intense light of God, but there was no synthesis of that light. As we're soon going to see inside the discourse, that the emotions could not contain the light. The vessels could not contain the light. And there was, so to speak, an explosion. Now, if you know anything about explosions, what item ends up furthest away from the explosion? If you're at an explosion site, what are you going to find if you find something furthest away from the explosion, right, that was affected by the explosion? Where did that start off?
From the force.
From the what?
When you had the explosion, you had a tremendous force.
Right, came from the force of the explosion. But was it like peripheral to the explosion, or was it close?
Part of the explosion. No, it was part of the explosion.
Right? The thing that's closest in becomes furthest away. When something explodes, the thing that is closest in ends up furthest away. Come in. I think someone was knocking on the door here. So,
Rabbi, could you send that drawing as a so I could print it out?
sure.
Thank you.
So in other words, the things that end up in this world that are the lower life force actually came from the highest level. That's what I was talking. It's a big explanation. It's a long explanation, but that's what I was talking about. The things that end up with the least amount of consciousness actually started off closest to the explosion. They were right there in the world of toes.
The center of the explosion.
The center of the explosion, exactly. They were from the highest level. The things that were further around the explosion didn't go as far away, right?
Right.
If you have an explosion right here, things that are right here are going to end up furthest away. If something is here, it's going to go away, but it's not going to be the furthest away. The things closest to the explosion are going to end up the furthest away. And so in this level of what I call the supernal explosion, it's called in Hebrew, the Arizal calls it Shviras HaKelim. It was the breaking of the vessels. The godly spark that was closest in ended up in physical material matter, not the human being. The human being is from a different level. The things that are the lowest in this world, namely not the human being, but animals and plants and inanimate, those things started off in the world of Tohu. Now let's go back to the Mimer and see what the Alter Rebbe describes here. Just give me a second. Let me send this file. I'm going to send this to the chat room. Are you able to get it from the chat, Susan?
Yes, sir. I'll pick it up. Thank you.
But it's not there yet. Hold on. I've got to figure out how to go to the chat. Let me stop the share for a moment. And let me find the file and see if this should go through. Okay, I have to open up the chat. Got to figure out what the chat is. Sorry, I'm not familiar with the chat button so much. Participants.
It's right next to that.
That's right. Those three dots there. There we go. No, it's not there. It's right next to participants.
On my screen anyway.
I know. Chat.
But I have Windows 7, so I'm behind.
Okay, I got it now.
Okay.
It takes me a few go here and there. So I'm going to send this on the chat to everybody. So you've got that chart. And make sure that you download it before I end the session. Okay. So let's go. The matter can be as follows. Bottom of the page.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. Explained in several sources that the source of inanimate matter plants and animals is from the realm of Tohu, which precedes the realm of Tikkun. You all understand what that means, at least for 5 minutes, right? It's very esoteric concepts. Although originally the realm of Tohu was more activated than the realm of Tikkun, its vessels were broken and then lowered after level in the process until they descended very low. Entities came into from them. So the vitality of the physical matter more than the human being are derived from a higher source. Now, the source of the soul of man is from the world of Tikkun, the world of correction, the world of synthesis. We're going to skip the italics here. Fundamental dimension of the world of Tikkun is the attribute of Chachma, wisdom, of Atzilus. When we look at this chart here, and we go to the world of Atzilus, this now begins the world of Tikkun. These blue spheres are the world we speak about more often. Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. These are all the world of Tikkun. Again, the world of synthesis. Synthesis means, take the beginning of the 10 spheros to the left. 10 spheros. The first level on the right is Chachma, which is wisdom. What wisdom is all about, really being a conduit. Okay?
Rabbi, could you please mute people because I'm getting feedback.
So Chachma is the first level of the 10 Sfirot. And Chachma is all about making room for another. It's about really being a conduit for the flow from above. So the realm of Tikkun is referred to drawing down of intellectual faculties, but with Chachma they will be refined. In other words, the whole refinement process, Chachma is going to be the beginning of the system. Going back to my analogy of earlier, right? When you want to create something, you want to create a system, can you start off with the question, okay, who wants to be first? No. You have to start off with the system. How is everything going to fit together with each other? And in order to know how everything is going to fit together with each other, you have to start off with emptiness. And you have to put your own self aside as well. Just as an interesting aside, who was the author of, who was the compiler of the Mishnah? The one who wrote the Mishnah, who compiled all of the laws of the Mishnah, really the first work of the oral Torah, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. And Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, the halacha does not follow him in the Mishnah. So he's writing this book and he's bringing all of the opinions, including his own opinion, although the Jewish law doesn't follow his opinion. He was the one that was necessary to put together this book because he was a man filled with humility. When he passed away, they said, humility is gone. We don't have humility in the world anymore. Right? There was, at one point they said that, and one rabbi spoke up and said, don't say that because I'm still here. And he was saying it out of humility, hard for us to understand. But Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, known as Rebbe, he was a man of tremendous humility. That's why he was able to synthesize all of the laws and bring them together. You see?
Okay, Rabbi, but he didn't know he had humility, did he?
Let's put it this way. Did Moshe know that he had humility? The Torah says, and Moshe was the most humble person on the face of the earth. Now, let me ask you, who wrote that down?
God wrote that. No?
Write it. God told Moshe to write it. And when
It was through Moshe.
Moshe was the one who wrote it down.
He was right, but
Now here's my question, Susan, because this is a very tricky topic. When God told Moshe to write down that Moses is the most humble man on the face of the earth, Va'ish Moshe anav ma'od mekal adam asher al pnei adama, God told Moshe to write those words down. Did Moshe say, "Oh no, not me"?
He was in a different state of consciousness, Rabbi.
When
Moshe was in a different state of consciousness when he got all this information from God.
Okay.
He was not self-aware. He couldn't have been self-aware. Otherwise, God wouldn't have been able to do it.
Well, we'd have to discuss really what's self-aware. I think he was self-aware. He wasn't self-conscious. He was definitely self-aware. He was self-aware and transcending the self at the same time. My point being, when somebody is truly humble and they know their qualities, they understand that they have the quality of humility. It doesn't make them not humble. In lower levels, it would make someone unhumble, right? If you have a contest in the synagogue and you say this next honor is going to go to the most humble person in the synagogue, and then a fight breaks out, that's not a good thing, right? Everyone is right saying, no, me, I'm more humble. We're not talking about that. Of course, the humble person would not be involved with that at all. But a humble person who is self-aware knows that he's humble, and it does not add any arrogance to him. Anyway, I want to move on to the point of the mimer, which is talking about everything is coming from Chachma. The level of Chachma, this wisdom, this is really a level of great humility, a great of putting oneself aside for that higher knowledge. Have you ever had the experience of speaking to somebody and thinking, I'm not going to really listen to what are they going to say that I'm going to gain from? And you don't really listen to them totally. You don't really acknowledge and appreciate what they have to say because your own ego is in the way. How about speaking to a very simple person and thinking what that person says is going to be very valuable to me? And you put your whole ego aside, right? That's Chachma. That is this Kabbalistic level of Chachma, which is really the source of synthesis. So man possesses an intellectual soul the primary dimension of the godly soul is intellectual, although it also possesses emotions. Its emotions are controlled by the intellect. This chain-like begin from its source in the attribute of Chachma. That's the human condition because we're in the level of tikkun. Tikkun is about the synthesis. Synthesis is always going to be when you have a certain system. Now, the breaking of the vessels that occurred in the realm of Tohu, we spoke about earlier, that there was a breaking of the vessels because there was more light and little vessel to contain it. So it affected the 7 emotional qualities of that realm. These, however, reflected elevated potentials. For there are emotions that transcend the level of Chachma Vatzilus. They are referred to as, Kabbalistically, they're we're going to go down to, because they were not interrelated, they fell and broke. We're going to skip the italics. Thus, as a result of their descent, the entities brought into being from them are on a lower level than man. Hence, they must be refined by man's efforts, because with this quality of Chachma, they will be refined, as stated above. Chachma is the process of synthesis. I can now take the spark that fell from this level of chaos, this level of supernal creativity that was above us, any system. But now that it's come down into a spark in this world, I can now synthesize it through Chachma. Through Chachma, I can refine it. Once they have been refined, however, they can now impart their vitality to man, because initially their source is higher than man's level. What they are metabolizing actually comes from a higher level where we ourselves are from. But because we have this chachma, this wisdom of the soul, we have the ability to synthesize this higher level and then benefit from it. Let me give you an example, okay? Because this is all very heady stuff. Let me give you an example for this. In my own life. In my youth, I would oftentimes engage in conversations with crazy people. I was in yeshiva. I was actually in Miami on Alton Road. And I would listen to crazy people. And I got great gems of wisdom from them. They couldn't function in the world. Their mind couldn't function either, because they were unbridled, untethered, unlimited. But I could listen to what they were saying and hear.
But they were creative, right, Rabbi? They were very creative.
Creativity, exactly. The greatest, you know what the greatest inhibitor of creativity is?
Order.
Thought, even thinking about it, right? We're always thinking about it, and this is going to be like this or like that, right? These people were uninhibited. So I would listen to them very intently, and I would gain. Now, I didn't go crazy, Baruch Hashem, but I would listen and realize that these people had great kernels of wisdom.
Yeah, but most creative people are not crazy. Most inventive people are not crazy.
Okay, now you say inventive is a little bit different than creative. Okay, but
you have to create something, you have to be inventive.
You have engineers and you have artists.
Yeah,
okay?
Artist is a different story. It's not inventive.
But they're totally different. Inventive people are totally different from creative.
Rabbi.
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm a classical pianist, okay? But I want to tell you something. When I was in New York, I was talking to this gentleman who invited us over to his home for Shabbos. And we were talking about classical musicians in Russia. And he kept insisting to me that they're all drunks. I said, how can you say that somebody like Rachmaninoff or somebody like Prokofiev or Tchaikovsky, these are people that you would call drunks, I said, because, they're very creative people. Well, he says that many of them, they go insane, he says, and they turn to alcohol. And, he's going through a whole thing about this, So, I mean, there are certain kinds of creativity, but something like that, where people are driven to the point where they go mad, even something like Beethoven, who kept taking his pen and erasing his notes, and you can see some of his scripts that they're totally scratched out. You know what I'm saying? But yet he was a very creative person, and he was deaf on top of it. He went mad
Right.
before he actually was able to write some of his, like an example is the Moonlight Sonata. That's a very good example.
Well, here, how about I throw out this name that will clarify for most of us here: Van Gogh.
Yeah, artist too. I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that every artist and every person of creativity is crazy. Now, inventive, if you want to create, just 1 second, please. If you want to create an instrument or a program or something, if you could bring creativity and inventive and order together, man, like a Steve Jobs, you're going to be a whole different category. There are people who are able to bring all of these together in an amazing way. But we understand that, if you hear that a great artist went out of his mind, you're going to say, those are the costs of doing business. If you hear an engineer who lost his mind, you say, oh, that's what happened, right? That's unusual.
Excuse me, Rabbi.
Yes, please.
I have to admit that order, as one of the people in Israel told me, a Badrich once said, Seder is not your strong point. Order isn't my strong point. And I did well academically more on the basis of remembering than on the basis of organizing material, although I am capable of doing it, but in a sort of a roundabout way. But
it's not your strong suit.
No, it's not my strong suit, but I do paint and I'm considered very creative. However, when it comes to being inventive, those who are more capable with an engineering bent, maybe with a little input from someone like myself who has an insight, can find it helpful. But I mean, I don't consider myself crazy, but sometimes I do have really good flashes of insight. But it's true, there is a bit of a problem between organization and creativity at times, but not always. And as you say, if you could bring those two together, it would really put things at a different level.
Right. And as a human being, Kabbalistically, that's what we're doing when we're eating. We're taking the level of food that is receiving from this level of tohu beyond. As a human being, we're able to now eat this food and metabolize it, and through that, study Torah, for example, serve God. And however we're serving God, we are now synthesizing level of chaos / creativity with the level of order. And that's what that is the whole idea of tikkun, spiritually, Kabbalistically.
Of course, with food, one has to have everything in very careful balance, especially if one has certain physical disabilities, like diabetic problems or something like that.
Well, this is ultimately, certainly the balance.
I have to make a comment, Rabbi. A Jewish gastroenterologist told me what not to eat. And for the last year, I've been feeling better and better and better. And now I feel so strong. A Jewish gastro guy, all right? He has made such a difference in my physical life because he told me what to eat and what not to eat.
Okay, all right. Give us the quick list, Susan. Now you
no corn, no beans, and no rice, and everything kosher.
No
No
corn,
beans and no rice?
That's correct. No corn, no beans, and no rice, and everything kosher. Whatever I buy or get, try to find that little kosher. I mean, he told me that not under duress. He told
Wow.
me it's totally honest.
Salt and sugar.
We didn't even talk about that because I'm not a sugar. I have no problems with sugar.
Rice, so rice,
No rice, no corn, and no beans.
so I shouldn't be teaching you.
It sounds
I'm
good.
just telling you, this made a huge difference in my life.
I'm kidding, because my name is Rice, that's all.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
That's okay, so no hummus, no
Sugar.
garbanzo beans.
Rabbi, you're lovable but not eatable.
I'm not audible, huh? That's a good thing on Passover, especially since I'm Ashkenazi. All right, we're gonna jump back to the discourse here. It's gonna go back into some Kabbalistic areas here, but that'll be okay. We'll because now that we have the overarching idea, we'll be able to do this a little bit quicker. Now we had said earlier that man does not live by bread alone, but rather by every utterance of the mouth of God shall man live. So now in this next paragraph, the utterance of God's mouth, what are we referring to? That means the source and root from which is drawn down influence that led to the revelation of the statement that issued from God's mouth. Let's finish the paragraph. At its source and root, bread is derived from a higher source than man, as explained above. For this reason, so you have the utterance, God spoke, and what did he say? Let us make man. Nase Adam. It is the last of the 10 utterances of creation, whereas the utterance, let the earth sprout forth vegetation. Let the earth bring forth living creatures. And all of the others, the utterance of, let us make man, for the above reason, because that their source is in a realm of tohu, which proceeds and is from a higher source than the realm of tikkun in which man is rooted. And accordingly, Rav Nachman in the Talmud, this is going back to maybe 300 of the Common Era, Rav Nachman said, the reason I did not tell you the explanation of the law in the evening was that I had not yet eaten the meat of an ox. It's obvious from this that food adds vitality, even to the powers of wisdom and intellect in man. How can food add? We all know, when we eat a meal, then well, not if you eat too much, of course, then it's going to have a counter effect. It'll be counter-effective, ineffective, or the opposite of effective. But if you eat the right amount, now you're filled. Now you can think straight. So the whole idea is that food, it's soul food. It is soul food because there's the soul of the food that comes from this higher level than the soul of the person. And through eating it and metabolizing it, we can now refine it and bring out its higher source level. And it in turn gives us life. We in turn elevate it back to its divine source above. So there's the symbiotic relationship that we have with the food, Kabbalistically. Similarly, the Talmud relates that child does not know how to call father, tastes grain. This also follows the above rationale, right? The same idea. We're going to go to the next paragraph. Other concepts apply with regard to the divine service. The task of refining the 288 sparks of tohu that are enclosed in material entities. Have you guys heard about the 288 sparks before?
No.
They are called the Rapach Nitzutzot. So this whole process of the breaking of the vessels that we spoke about earlier, so what happened is that now we have divine sparks. You know why the word spark is used? What is a spark? It is a component of light that is separated from its source. You see, this is the idea of these sparks. Because of the breaking of the vessels, these sparks descended below. The Arizal explains to us that in the creation of the world, 288 sparks descended into this world for the Jewish people to humankind, really. But now
Rabbi, this is happening all the time, though. We're getting those sparks all the time.
that we are elevating those sparks, and really sub sparks, because when we left Egypt, it says that there was a mix of 202 that left Egypt with them, Erev Rav. So the Kabbalah explains that the Jewish people left Egypt with 202 sparks. So really, we're just working on 86 sparks since then. So there are, obviously, each spark has got billions and billions of components. So every time we eat kosher food, we recite a blessing, we use that energy to serve God in some way, shape, or fashion, we are elevating it, source. And through that, we are deriving energy from the lofty source, right? Like my speaking, by way of analogy, when I was speaking to the crazy person, I was getting that information from them. And in turn, that person felt a little bit more like a human being because I was listening to him. You see, so they're the symbiotic relationship. When you can bring the creative chaos together with the holy spiritual order created by God. That's the ultimate of existence according to this whole doctrine of the breaking of the vessels. So they are refined sparks. Here we are. They are refined and ascend upward following the paradigm of tikkun, which is the source of the godly soul, of our godly soul, through one's divine service in the recitation of the Shema and prayer, right? The power and the vitality that is increased by eating for the sake of heaven. Again, the vitality, the energy that is increased by eating when we're eating for the sake of heaven is subsumed in the realm of holiness through our declaration, God is one and you shall love God. So here's the unobvious partner. When we close our eyes and we say, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, and we realize that all that exists is God, how did we have the energy to do that?
By eating.
By eating.
It's easy. God made it easy for us.
So we eat the food, and that food is energizing our declaration of God's oneness. So there you have it, right there. That's what the Alter Rebbe is explaining here.
He had to create the food before he created man.
That's right.
Otherwise, we wouldn't survive.
Exactly. And this adds strength to the meditation on and the arousal of love for God, causing the meditation, the knowledge and the love and fear to be reinforced and connected more powerfully than it would be as a result of the potential of the godly soul itself for the reason above. In other words, what the Alter Rebbe is saying is not just that we're getting strength from the food, we're getting a spiritual sustenance from the source of the food to be able to relate to God on a higher level, a level that we would not be able to reach on our own. The qualities stemming from the 288 sparks of tohu that are enclosed in the food are above the realm of tikkun, right? The lower level. Therefore, they also have the potential to elevate the attributes of wisdom and emotion in the godly soul in the Shema prayer and the involvement in the Torah and its mitzvos.
Rabbi,
Yes, please.
okay, what I want to ask you is, do alcoholic beverages play a role in this? Is that considered food?
Let's see. Is it food? Okay, so right now, seemingly, what we're talking about mostly is sustenance, right? Foods that sustain us.
But you said Hochma though. If Hochma, you receive from a certain amount of alcoholic consumption, which does seem to play a role in. Am I correct or am I mistaken on that? I'm not.
Well, it says in the Talmud, Tamra v'reicha pikhin, that a certain amount of wine and a certain amount of good smelling spice will make one more wise.
And a little bit more wine after that.
Does the opposite, yes.
But you have to know the amount. You have to
Right.
know
Right.
to pull back
Right.
or
So
it happens.
first of all, I want just to state as a disclaimer, if somebody has a problem with drinking, right, then they should not be touching this stuff. It's a poison to them. And like a friend of mine once said, he says, I'm the kind of guy that doesn't like to drink at all. But when I have one drink, I become a different guy. That guy loves to drink.
A Nazarite doesn't drink, obviously. Or,
Well, interestingly, a Nazarite,
being a dot, comes. Where does it come from? I mean, obviously, food and a certain amount of drink. I mean, that plays a role in an elevation of the neshama, of the madrega. I would assume, in the. Am I correct? I mean, in the hierarchy of
Wine is man-made. It was not
in the
created
hierarchy
by
of
God.
I'm sorry, we've got two different people talking once. Moshe,
I didn't get to finish
what
what
your
I wanted to
question
say.
is.
And in the hierarchy of the Sfirot, you're saying that food, but you're saying that alcohol may or may not, you're saying, in that regard.
Let me put it this way. Alcohol could be part of the service of God. There's no question about it. We know the rabbis already established that we recite Kiddush on a glass of wine. Not only that, they made a special blessing just for wine, unlike any other food, right? If you drink tomato juice, there's not a special blessing for tomato juice. I think if the rabbis, if we had the Sanhedrin today, they would make a special blessing for coffee. But they did. Actually, they already did. They made a special bracha for coffee, and they made it the second blessing of the Amidah. Blessed are you, God, Mechaya Hametim, that you bring the dead back to life. But anyway, I'm kind of joking. But getting back to the wine, so clearly the rabbis saw that this alcohol is definitely has a potential for service of God. I don't think that it's the same level of what we're talking about here, though, Moshe. Here we're talking about foods that sustain. These might be from even a higher level, and I'd have to really examine that deeper and look and find sources to see. I don't think alcohol is in the same realm of what we're talking about. It might be even higher.
Okay, thank you.
It says nichnas yayin.
It says so.
When wine enters, yatz so the secret comes out. You know why? Do you know why you know where that comes from? Well, it's in the Talmud, but I'll share with you the gematria. So here you go. Yayin. Yayin, what's the numeric value of yayin? It's
70.
70, right? Now let's take sod. That's 60 plus 6 plus 4. What does that equal? 70, right? They have the same gematria, yayin and sod. And obviously, it's also related to the very practical fact that when somebody has less inhibition, the secrets come out. But Kabbalistically, through wine, we can actually reach this level of a deeper reality. So there is that capacity. The Nazir was bringing out a different quality, real quality that's necessary in life, and that is abstention. Sometimes what's necessary is to abstain, right? Nevertheless, even the Nazir would have to bring a sin offering. You know why he had to bring a sin offering? Because he abstained. Because that the ultimate purpose, God doesn't want us to abstain. God wants us to participate in life in moderation and enjoy it and elevate it. And if you abstain, you're not doing that. Rabbi Eliezer says whenever there was a new fruit or something that he never tasted, Rabbi Eliezer would always go to make sure to eat that new fruit, to elevate it to the service of God. The Nazir, on the other hand, had other problems he had to deal with. And so then the solution was to abstain. So it's not one size fits all. Everyone has to know where their situation is in life to know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
They have to blow the signal, the whistle.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Wow. So that's really quite a
Great class today. And the participation is wonderful.
yeah.
It helps me understand.
Sure.
Anna, thank you.
Yeah, Anna, you must have something else to add or comment, please.
Yeah, I wanted to say that this old saying that some people eat to live and some people live to eat. That's what matters. If you see it as a source of doing the right thing, it's one thing. And then I don't think anyone even need any limits, because your goal, your idea really will tell you when it's enough or when you need more. But if it is for a wrong reason, then whatever you do is probably or too much or not enough. That's why I believe that this whole explanation of food being a higher level or something that elevates us, helps us to create much better understanding or service or whatever. That's the main purpose. If it is just
balance.
Yeah, not only balance, but the purpose. I think it's really makes. It's like life itself. Some people are wasting it for something that is so irrelevant, and you feel like it's a waste, even though they eat and they do all other things as everybody else does. Anyway, I think it was really interesting to see it, because originally you look at the very simple plant or even animals, and we used to think that they're really lower in our spirit. But again, the purpose is everything.
There's a higher potential. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I have another line that I use about food, and that is, I don't always apply it, but this is what I try to think about. Am I consuming the food, or is the food consuming me?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, eating to live or living to eat. There's actually at the back of our Tehillim, there are those letters at the back of the Tehillim, and there's one in there where it's a story about the Alter Rebbe calling in the Yid and the Goyish coach driver, and they each had a different take on living life.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Ivan.
Right, Ivan.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And God willing, we will continue.
Like I said, everybody, stay safe.
Thank you.
And thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a wonderful week. That's it.